Hey, welcome back on this Monday, January 15th. Thank you so much for being with us. Happy Martin Luther King Day. As the world celebrates that, or at least the country celebrates that. Don Fischer, the voice of the Indiana Hoosiers, with us as the Hoosiers prepare for probably their biggest game of the season tomorrow night at home against Purdue, as the Boilers will coming off of not a great week for them. They take an L, but they're going to be looking to get on the other side. Plenty of things to get to. Don, how are you, sir? How was your weekend?
It was cold. It was fine, but it was cold. No question about that. At the same time, it was busy because I had to do some taping this weekend because of the holiday coming up today, Martin Luther King holiday, which we're going to have our first talk show with Coach Woodson since back on December the 18th. So it's been a while, almost a month since we had our last talk show. So we'll have a chance to talk to the coach for the first half hour of the show then, and a special guest tonight on the second half of the show, because we taped an interview with Curt Cignetti, the new Indiana football coach, who is just a tremendous person, a guy I really enjoyed talking to. First in-depth interview with him, and I think you'll really enjoy what you hear.
Yeah, before we get to Coach Woodson, your first time to sit down with Curt Cignetti, and he is obviously someone that has brought a level of excitement to the fans of Indiana football that I personally have not seen. You know, when I was in school during the Mel Mallory era, which it was really fun. Indiana was competitive then, but from a fan standpoint, from then being a student, being in the media, I have not seen this level of excitement since then, or even more so. I mean, the anticipation is there, and it's not to go 12-0. It's just to have a successful program. And they all seem to believe in what Cignetti is saying and about, even though there's not been a snap yet. But his moxie, I guess you could say. And I think that's something Indiana needs, even though it's not deserved because of of the past, but they need that. They need someone who has that, and he certainly seems to possess that in abundance.
He believes in his system. He absolutely has the utmost confidence. He's done this rebuild, is what he calls it, twice before. And he's taken over programs that have not been very good for several years leading up to the point where he's taken over. And he's developed this system. And without question, yeah, he's like every coach. They make mistakes just like everybody else does. But his system works. And one of the key things he talked about and that he stated, and he just kind of glossed over it briefly, and then I pulled him back into the conversation about it, is development. You have to develop players at Indiana. You're not going to get the 5-star guys and all that kind of stuff at IU because of the tradition or the lack of tradition for football. So you've got to be able to build guys. And that's what Bill Mallory did when he came to Indiana University. He developed players. He got the 2- and the 3-star guys to become 4-star guys by the time that they were starting to play for him on a consistent basis. You have to develop players. And I think that's the critical aspect of what he brings to the table that will make him a success at Indiana University. I don't think there's a lot of question about that.
No, he's already had a ton of players follow him, and even though most of them are what you would call high mid-majors, it doesn't matter. There's just a belief. You cannot have that many come that when there's just not a belief.
Right.
And it's clear that those guys believe in what he's doing, especially the 9 that came from JMU. That's a high number. So they obviously believe in what he's doing. And it just seems that Indiana is on the right trajectory, at least. Even though like I said, there hasn't been a snap. I get that. I just think that first of all, the belief, there's not going to be a quarterback controversy going into next year. That's one thing I'll guarantee you. Obviously, I think Curtis Rhodes is going to be the starter. That's why he's here. But regardless of that, there will be a decision made before the first game without question.
Well, and here's the other thing. When you're a head football coach, you've been someplace before, and you bring, I think 6 of his staff from that school. You hit the ground running. You don't have to coach coaches. You're literally hitting the ground running with your program. And he's got 3 or 4 new coaches on his staff that are not guys that he has coached or that he has worked with prior to this. And maybe he has worked with a couple of these guys elsewhere. I don't know. All I'm telling you is that this guy has hit the ground running. He has brought an excitement level and a buzz to Indiana football for the first time in my mind since Terry Hepner. And without question, this guy knows what he wants to do. He knows how to do it. And we'll see exactly if that comes to fruition as far as wins and losses are concerned. And my gut feeling is that Indiana is going to have a season better than anybody anticipates.
Oh, I expect them to make a bowl game at a minimum. I don't know. It's a tough schedule, without question. You've got not one, but both teams that played in the national championship on your schedule. There's not a lot of teams that can say that, Don.
Well, the one good thing about Washington being the team that does come to Bloomington is that they won't have Kalen DeBoer anymore. They won't have Michael Penix anymore. They got a bunch of other guys that'll be gone, and they got a new coach. So they're going to be under a new system. They may be ripe for the picking.
And you know what? That's the first thing I thought. I did. Seriously, when all this went down with Kalen, I'm like, you know what? That just changed things for Indiana, because that was an L for me on the schedule. I'm like, that's a loss. Well, that changes things. Not that Washington's just going to fall into oblivion, but when you have a change, it makes a difference, especially when you're losing the players that they're not going to have Roma Dunze or Michael Penix of those guys. So
right.
Yeah, it will be a huge difference. And now that turns into a different scenario because it's a home game.
Yeah, there's no question. But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
No.
There'll be a lot of work to do before then. But I do think that this new coaching staff, the players that they brought in, and they brought in 10 JMU players, incidentally, 10.
10.
Including the best wide receiver of that program, which was a really good get in that sense. But those 10 guys will also form the nucleus of the leadership on this new program because, again, they know the system. They understand what the coach is looking for. And the one thing that he talked about in our interview, he said, we're not going to be soft. We're not going to be a soft football team. We're going to be a tough football team.
Well, he tweeted that out, Don, that he is stalking softness to eradicate it.
Exactly.
And just to hear that, to see him tweet that kind of stuff out, that's also being embraced.
Yep.
On the other side of things, on the hardwood, Indiana basketball tomorrow night, their toughest test to date, even though I know they've played UConn, I know they played Kansas. They've got a home game against one of the top teams in the country and the best team in the conference, Purdue, coming in with Mount Edie and all of that. This is a very, very important game. Purdue has been shown to be human, beatable. Nebraska beat them at home, and now Indiana is on the clock with an opportunity to pick up their first signature win of the season, potentially.
Well, let's look at it from another perspective. Purdue got beat by Indiana twice last year. So they are going to come in here with a chip on their shoulder, even though they've lost 2 ball games in Big Ten play. The most recent, of course, to Nebraska, a team that beat Indiana. So my gut feeling is that Purdue is going to come in and they are going to be on a mission in this matchup with Indiana. On the other side of it, Indiana knows that they play their best basketball at home. They certainly have done that thus far this year. That's not necessarily the thing that you want to hear, because you want to be able to play your best basketball no matter where you play, home or road. But that said, we will see a crowd that will help this Indiana basketball team tomorrow night. Purdue is terrific. They have all the tools to win a national championship. There's no question. But Indiana has proven when you come to Assembly Hall and it's a game of this magnitude, things can get changed pretty quickly. And we will see if Indiana can manage this situation in the right way, because they're going to need all hands on deck in this ball game if they're going to beat the Purdue Boilermakers tomorrow night.
Absolutely. Not only that, they're going to have to get maybe some things they haven't had, and that is great play on the interior as well as from the perimeter. And the perimeter has been kind of an issue for Indiana. They're going to have to get scoring. They're going to have to get solid guard play. Gabe Cupps has been solid as a player, but offensively does not contribute much. And the up and down play of Xavier that's been an issue of late. So they're going to have to Trey Galloway. They're going to have to get some perimeter help to win this game without question.
Well, if Trey Galloway plays like he did against Minnesota, that's what you need. I mean, Trey Galloway was tremendous in that ball game. 7 assists. He was 4 of 5 from the field, 2 of 3 from the 3-point line. He did everything you want from a guard in that ball game. And, Bob Knight,
that's big.
Yeah. And, Bob Knight used to say, I don't have a point guard. I have guards. They all have to do the same thing. They have to be able to do what I ask them to do. And in this particular contest, they did that. Gabe Cupps, to me, is one of the best freshman defenders in the country. I mean, this guy keeps people in front of him. He doesn't make it easy for them. Look what he did against Elijah Hawkins in the game against Minnesota. That kid's been playing his best basketball of the season. I'm talking about Hawkins now. Up until the last 6 or 7 ball games, he's been playing his best basketball. And I thought Gabe Cupps did a phenomenal job on defensing that guy. Now, Gabe's not been an offensive factor so far this year. I think he had 11 in one ball game, but that's his best contest from an offensive standpoint as far as scoring the basketball. But if your other guys are doing what they're supposed to do, and Mackenzie Mbako has picked it up dramatically, over the last 6 games, he's hitting 48% of his threes. He did more in the Minnesota game than I've ever seen him do from an offensive standpoint. He drove the basketball. He drew fouls. He didn't just take the first jump shot that was available to him. He actually, if somebody was up on him, he tried to drive around them. He tried to get to the rim. I loved what I saw out of Mackenzie in that regard. I think he's gotten better as a defensive player as well. He's not dramatically great in that department just yet, but he's gotten better. And that's what you're expecting of your freshmen. As they move along, they're going to get better as they do. And that's certainly what we've seen from him. But I think the real key in this ball game is what Indiana can do with Khalil Ware. I think Khalil Ware can be a factor in this contest. He's going to get banged around a little bit, but he's got to be able to handle that and not foul. And Mackenzie Mbako's in the same position because he has fouled too many times this year or gotten silly fouls. And these two guys are going to go up against some bigs for Purdue that are really talented. Trey Coffin-Wren is another guy that they're going to have to deal with because this guy is talented and he's a big. But I just think if Indiana plays up to their capability, especially at the defensive end of the floor, because that's, if you think about last year, Indiana won the game, both those ball games, because they did not let their guards beat them. And that's been the real struggle for this Indiana ball club so far this year. The guard play has been a little bit suspect. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. There's no question in my mind. I think Indiana will have to play the best basketball they played this season to beat Purdue. If they do, they'll have a chance to win.
Yeah, the Purdue's how their guards go still is how their success rate is, because Edey is Edey, and he's always going to be Edey. I don't think that Indiana or anybody else is really going to slow him down that much, and that's going to be interesting to see what Mike Woodson does with him. I wouldn't be surprised to see Sparks come in a lot, because there's probably going to be some fouls drawn, but also just for the bulk. Sparks, obviously the biggest guy on the team, and we've seen him come in and play well, and he loves that role. I think he really enjoys that. But you're going to see Sparks on Edey a bit. Obviously, daggone it, Malik Renew. But the thing with Malik, also, you talk about fouls. He's had a penchant sometimes for picking up fouls, and it's going to be very important for him not to get into that situation because Indiana absolutely has to have him on the floor.
Right. And here's another thing, too. It'll be interesting to see if Khalil Ware can pull Zach Edey out from underneath the basket because Khalil Ware can shoot the three. And he's going to shoot the three if he gets opportunities. You know that. And if he knocks a couple down, what happens there defense or from
that was my curiosity. Who's going to for Purdue? Who is going to guard Khalil Ware? I don't know that it's going to be Edey because of that. He has Matt has to know that that's going to be a potential game plan of Indiana if they put him on Khalil. Hell, he's going to go outside, and that opens up the paint for Indiana.
Right. So it will be an interesting matchup, to say the least. Purdue's proven they can be beat. They've been beat twice this year on the road against Northwestern and against Nebraska. So it's not like it's out of the question that Indiana can't win this ball game. But Indiana's going to have to play their best. There's just no question in my mind.